So about a couple weeks ago, I came back from VCF and I picked up this computer from my homie who was willing to sell it to me for 50 bucks. And if you guys haven't seen the vlog that I did on VCF, make sure you check it out on top. But the reason why I bought this is because I was interested in the graphics card, and this one has an RX 580 in it, which is way better than what I have in this one. The RX 580 interested me because I wasn't looking to upgrade to something like dramatic, like a RTX 4090, or anything like that, because that can be pretty expensive. To be honest, the RX 580, as far as what I've read about it, it's actually one of the best used graphics cards you can find in the market. And despite it being older, it actually still is really good for gaming and doing what you need to do. So the other thing I really like about this too is that it has tons of RAM in this thing, and it has a built-in Wi-Fi antenna embedded in the motherboard. I was having issues with USB Wi-Fi adapters. I'm actually on my second one, and occasionally, so far it's been stable, but in the beginning it was giving me problems. The first one was, just crapped out. So you might be wondering why I have this box here, and that's because actually I'm going to be transferring all the contents from this case to the new case. Now, I was originally just going to transfer the contents from this case to this one. This is my original case that I had when I first built this one. But the thing that worried me about this is the cooling situation, which I don't think is very good. But I really like this one, especially because it has a bunch of fans in it. I think it has 3 fans in the front. It's got 2 coming down by the CPU, and then it has 1 in the back, so therefore it has a total of 6, I believe. So it's also good for future proofing too, since it does have better cooling back there. And I can get those, RGB fans working and shit, and the ports that are front here. Because I've been having problems with this case where the front ports don't really work that well. And the LED light, I've never been able to get to work for some reason. So that's kind of a bummer. But yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and get started, and I'm going to go over everything that I'm going to be putting in this case from this one. So let's get to it. Now we're going to start on top by taking out the Wi-Fi antennas. My older motherboard doesn't have support for those, and I kind of like the idea of having them. I did have problems before with USB adapters with the old setup, and I want to free up USB ports, so that's why I'm going to be swapping motherboards out. Now the graphics card that I'm taking out is actually what I had before, which is this GT 1030, which is kind of a crappy one, not well suited for gaming. And I've actually wanted to upgrade the GPU before, but only now am I doing it. So when it came time to take out the motherboard screws, I had a tough time trying to get that top right one out, but for now I went ahead and took out the other screws. It seemed like the screws were hidden, but in reality they're just so small that they're hard to find. And that's because I tried to pull the motherboard out a couple times without even noticing. But also the back fan would have gotten away regardless, so I just put it off to the side for now. And after taking out most of the screws, I managed to get the motherboard out of the case. So when I tried to free the motherboard from the case, somehow I thought that the cooler screws were holding the motherboard into the case. But when I pulled off the cooler, that's when I decided it was time for some new thermal paste. I thought I had some left in my bag, but I didn't. So I ended up heading over to Best Buy before closing, and sure enough, here it is. Now, before applying this stuff, I need to clean off the old paste. So to do that first, to give myself some room, I took out the RAM sticks real quick. And then as far as removing the old paste, I took some rubbing alcohol and poured some in the cap. And then I took a microfiber cloth and dipped it in. And then I carefully wipe away the old paste from the CPU. I was trying not to press too hard when removing it, since this is a pretty sensitive part. Then I did the same thing with the cooler, just to get it smooth enough to apply that fresh paste down there. Before applying the new paste real quick, I wanted to blow some compressed air over it since it was pretty dirty. But I wasn't too worried about deep cleaning it, so for now after that I'm just going to go ahead and apply just a small bead of paste onto the CPU. And you really don't need a lot of this stuff, because once you lay down the cooler and have it running for a bit, it'll spread out evenly and cool it down. before slapping the cooler on top too, I was being real careful since I didn't want to have to take it off and then have to reapply the paste. So after carefully doing that, I also took off these 2 brackets, which the screws go into for the cooler. So I had to be careful with those too. And after tightening everything up, it was pretty much time for the new case. I really like the open door a lot better than my old case, which had those 4 screws holding the tempered glass together. And it really makes it easier for me to tinker with it in case something happens to it, or if I need to upgrade it or whatever. When I bought this on Amazon, there were a couple options as far as the case, and what I like about this case especially is the mesh in the front, since I think that it's even better for airflow, which is pretty much the main reason why I went with this new case. So upon inspecting the case, I found the manual on the other side where the power supply goes into. And it's funny because I was actually thinking that maybe it did come with a manual, but it turns out that the manual and the hardware were all together. And the manual is pretty basic. I mean, it's nothing too crazy. So I started out by mounting the motherboard in there, but unfortunately I was having troubles getting it in there, and that's because I haven't been able to get that top right screw out like I mentioned earlier. And that's because there's some sort of stud that's stuck on there. And luckily I managed to take one of my fix-it bits out to free that screw. And I believe there was one more I had to free up, but after that I was able to mount it into the case. Actually, I almost forgot there was the motherboard plate, which I forgot to take out the last case, so I had to grab that real quick and mount it before I can mount the motherboard. Now that that's done, I went ahead and slapped in all the RAM sticks that I had in my old case, and installing these gave me a total of a massive 56 gigabytes of RAM. But later on I did run into some trouble with the RAM, which I'll explain a little bit later. Moving on to the other side of the case, I got another peek here to see what I'm working with. And the one thing that confused me was the connectors for the fan, which looks like they're all daisy chained together. So I thought that I was going to have a tough time trying to get the fans to work, and especially because I don't really have a lot of experience building computers. Well, it's been a couple of years since I built mine, so. But for now, I decided to leave it be and focus on installing the SSD onto the bracket back here. after screwing that in, now it's time to move on to the power supply, which is 600 watts. Before hooking it up though, I realized that the wires would have gotten in the way. So I ended up taking my 1 terabyte Western Digital hard drive and putting it in the bay first. Then I'm going to go ahead and feed the wires to the case to get everything plugged in. I had to take out the RX 580 real quick to give myself some more room to work with, but I'll go ahead and put that back in a minute since I'll need to plug it in as well. And once that's done, I'll go ahead and turn it on and make sure that it's working properly. And 2 things here. First, I didn't realize there was a button on top of the case that enables the LED lights. And the other thing is, for some reason, the third fan on the bottom wasn't spinning. But after looking it over, it was just a wire that was in the way. And after everything, I decided to try out a couple of free games on Steam, and the games actually run really good. And Car Mechanic Simulator is a game that I go back to every once in a while, which I ended up running it on lower settings on the old card, but on here I'm pretty much able to max everything out, which shows just how much of an improvement this really is. And if I wanted to, I can pretty much throw plenty of games at it. Even though it's kind of old by now since it did come out in 2017, I think this card still serves its purpose today. And you know, this is just coming from me, and I don't even do a lot of PC gaming. Would I get a better graphics card in the future? Sure. Keep in mind that I was trying to do everything on a budget, and this was something I managed to pick up for a steal, which was an added benefit. But either way, I'm pretty happy with the setup, and if it means future-proofing what I have, I think it'll last me for quite some time. Now, I realized that at some point during the video, I forgot to mention what had happened to the RAM sticks as far as having issues with those. And it turns out that about a week or two after filming everything, that these had completely took a dump. And I'm talking about like all 3 of these. So what happened was it was constantly crashing, and at times it wouldn't even boot. So it would take me straight to the BIOS, and it wasn't picking up any of the RAM sticks, which is kind of a bummer. So I had to take these out and put the old RAM sticks back in. I'm still pretty happy with it overall. So, you know, having the extra RAM, it's not really that much of importance to me, I realized. So, it's good news. But yeah, I just thought I'd throw that out there. And yeah, I'm going to go ahead and end the video here.